What's your position on the repayment of residents who have been overassessed and overpaid property taxes?
It should occur. You know, it's ironic that the citizens in Detroit who have paid so much in taxes, we would discover that people were overtaxed conservatively to the tune of $600 million. And so I believe in the 3 C's. First of all, there has to be compensation for people who are overtaxed. And we can arrive by that in a very simple mechanism. For those people who actually own their homes, we can give them a property tax credit on their future credits to compensate them for what they have paid in overtaxation. For those people who actually lost their homes, I think this was an excellent opportunity to take some of the 40,000 houses that are in the land bank and provide these houses free of charge to people who have been overtaxed and who have lost their homes, and then give them property tax relief on the back end so that they can get into those homes and make that home a meaningful place for them to live. We also have to be very clear about our assessment issues in the city of Detroit. People are still being overassessed on their taxes in the city of Detroit. And part of my plan there is to go back and revamp and reexamine actual assessments of people who are currently paying taxes. We know that people at the lower end of the spectrum tend to be overassessed. And so we've got to begin to equalize that out and create a system of fairness so that everybody pays their fair share of taxes, that no one pays more than they should. There also, I think, has to be a commitment on the other side to create more home ownership opportunities out of this whole overassessment, loss of home issue. When you've had more than 150,000 people lose their homes as a result of tax foreclosure, we have to have a commitment to ensure that we get people back in their homes as owners. We have a lot of people now who are renting the home that they lost as a result of overtaxation. And I think the city should be setting up mechanisms, either through the using of their affordable housing dollars or forcing the banks in this city to lend to people who have homes that are less than $100,000. There are a lot of restrictions on how banks actually can lend at that level. And I think we need to be lobbying our people in the legislature to make the necessary changes to ensure that the structural racism element of lending in the city of Detroit is abandoned.
What's your position on the repayment of residents who have been overassessed and overpaid property taxes?
Yeah, I need to check into that myself to see if I can get some reassessment. But so we know about the money that's coming into the city through the rescue plan and things like that. I believe there should be monies allocated to make sure that people are recompensed. You got to recompense when you've done wrong to people. And so making sure that, especially if people lost their homes due to not being able to afford the taxes. And so making sure that that money, those millions of dollars that are coming in the city, that we allocate funding from that money to make sure that funds go to recompensing those who've been overtaxed in their homes.
What's your position on the repayment of residents who have been overassessed and overpaid property taxes?
Well, I really feel like more along the lines of the same thing, something that needs to be granted to these people because these people have been wronged. I would urge federal colleagues to get involved in that because that was robbery. How can you give somebody's money away, as overassessment, and also people who lost their pensions through the bankruptcy with Jones Day? Those people were still, a lot of them passed away during the COVID thing, though, unfortunately. But a lot of those people are still alive and they have nothing to rely on anymore.
What's your position on the repayment of residents who have been overassessed and overpaid property taxes?
So correct me if I'm wrong, with the overtaxation and getting people repaid who were over repaid, it should not, for one, come from the taxes that we already paid. That's kind of like a double whammy in my opinion. But the city just received money from the federal government, and they're trying to have a discussion right now on who should get the money and who shouldn't get the money, right? So that money that comes from the federal government for them to, figure out what Detroit wants to do with it, that money should go towards people who have been overtaxed and overassessed on their houses. Or two, if the mayor doesn't want to use that money for that, you should lower people's property tax. If I've overpaid $20,000 on my property taxes, for the next X amount of years, that money that I overpaid should be added to my taxes right now to where I don't have to pay it until that money runs out. That's how we should do it, to where people are getting repaid back on their property taxes. If the mayor doesn't want to use the money he's getting from the federal government, don't make people pay taxes until their money runs out for however much they overpaid.
What's your position on the repayment of residents who have been overassessed and overpaid property taxes?
And it's sad to say that this is just one issue in a sea of many. Detroiters have been overpaying and overtaxed and overextended and over subsidizing the lives of all those around us. This is not something that's new. So the travesty of the $600 million, I believe it is, over assessment in taxes over I'm not even sure what the time frame was. And there are some folks who've lost their homes because of it. And there's no easy answer to it. So I think that we have to be figuring out how we can lean on the support of our friends at the state level. I think that we have to be tapping into the philanthropic community. I mean, I understand that Dan Gilbert recently announced a large gift over 10 years, and I'm curious about why. After the last State of the City address, when the current mayor announced that there's nothing we could do about the overassessments, and it's that's money that's already spent. I'm curious about why, when our friend Dan Gilbert announced that he was going to be when he announced his spending over the next 10 years, why that wasn't a piece of the package. But I do think that there's room to be partnering with corporations who are receiving a lot from this city. As I said, we're subsidizing the corporations, the businesses, the employment of a lot of folks who are around Detroit. We're providing the buildings. We're giving the tax rebates. We're giving the tax breaks for tens of thousands of people to come into Detroit for employment. And I think that the corporations owe the people of the city something. And I don't think it's too much to ask corporations and other parties to step in to figure out how we can make people who've been harmed in all these processes whole.
What's your position on the repayment of residents who have been overassessed and overpaid property taxes?
Well, for one, I'm one of those citizens that was overcharged. And budgetarily, I know it's impossible to pay the $600 million back at one time in a lump sum. But I would suggest a payment plan for over the next 3 to 5 years, depending on exactly how much was overassessed per resident, that their taxes will be reduced for the next 3 to 5 years until they have been recouped all the money that they were overcharged.
What's your position on the repayment of residents who have been overassessed and overpaid property taxes?
Well, I will say that those that has been overassessed, I feel that those that has lost their homes, they should be given the first chance to buy foreclosed homes in the city of Detroit. Also, I will make the land bank bidding first class for citizens of the city of Detroit. I will not make it privatized like it is now. And I will also make sure that the people that didn't lose their homes, that they can be refunded that taxes in with their homes, either refund them taxes on the taxes program or send them a check.
What's your position on the repayment of residents who have been overassessed and overpaid property taxes?
The current administration said that they don't got it. What you gonna do? And that's, I owe them money. They don't want their money, and we need to have that addressed. From the federal government is giving Detroit over $800 million. Okay, we could use some of that money to reconcile that. They gave them a check recently for $400 million. In the beginning of next year, it's going to be another $400 million. So we can utilize that money to bring justice. That means people have been harmed, and we want to make sure they was made whole. They're made whole, and we got to get that. We got to address that. Like I said, justice means guaranteeing no one's being mistreated, and guaranteeing whoever needs the most constructive help receive it, and that's what we got to do.
What's your position on the repayment of residents who have been overassessed and overpaid property taxes?
And that is so horrible. I have people in my family that was personally affected by that. I have a friend that lives on the other side of 8 Mile that worked for General Motors all of her life. Now she's paying rent that she really can't afford because she was forced out of her home for taxes. I was told that you could go to The housing authority, one of my friends, Mr. Geist, told me he received $8,000 back, but he had to really go through a process. It is a sticky situation because if we were overtaxed, you still have people that's paying taxes now and that is looking at foreclosures. We really need to revamp that. Back in 2002, all of my taxes was paid and my home was taken from the Michigan Land Bank. And I just recently got my home back on the tax to pay taxes just recently through the Detroit Land Bank. So there's been so much corruption with taxes. I think that someone should investigate the city tax department and also the Wayne County Tax Department to find out where did those funds go. Now, what are we going to do about people who lost their homes? So I have came up with a policy and a program that we're going to be pushing called No Bandos, because we've been surveying Detroit. We see a lot of beautiful homes that are empty that people can move into. So we're coming up with policies and some type of action plan to get Detroiters back into the city of Detroit, back into, now other people have taken over their home. So give them a home back, into their possession.